Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Neshtiki Om Ajnantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasma Shri Guruve Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Kam karoti vachanam pannam yati giranit kripatanam ye pradinata parmanam parmadhav. Okay, so this is 6.1 and 2, two chapters actually on the potency of the holy name. So everybody is familiar with the background. Ajamel was a sinner. At the time of death, he called out to his son Narayan. Because he was a sinner, the agents of Yamraj, the Yamadutas, they came to claim his soul for a suitable punishment. And because he chanted the name of the Lord, the Vishnudutas came and forbade the Yamadutas from taking Ajamel to hell. And then there is this conversation that happens between the Vishnudutas and Yamadutas that essentially contains within it a deeper understanding of the potency of the holy name. So, some more background. Ajmal was a pious Brahmin. He had a chaste wife and lived with his parents in a pious household. And one day in the forest, he witnessed a Shudra and a prostitute intoxicated, engaging in lewd sexual behavior. So, this had a significant impact on Ajmal. And even though he tried to pacify his mind with his intelligence, with the Vedic instructions that he had heard, he failed. So eventually he engaged the prostitute as a servant and ultimately as his companion. He forced his parents and wife to leave and began to live a depraved life as a prostitute. Then, in order to maintain her and her 10 children, he resorted to stealing and cheating others. The youngest son was named Narayan. Ajmal was 88 years old by this time. He was very much attached to his youngest son and would often call out to him. So, in this way, foolish Ajmal reached the point of death. Then, witnessing four fearsome looking creatures, the Yamdutas, he began to call out in alarm to his son Narayan. So, at that time, three effulgent persons, the Vishnudutas, also appears. And what follows is the conversation between them. This kind of setting the scene. So, when Ajamel first chanted the name Narayan at the Jatakarma of his youngest son, all his sins were eradicated at that time. So the analogy given is like a dry grass is burnt. So when the dry grass is burnt, there is no question of it growing again because the fire consumes the grass and its roots completely. So similarly, when Ajamel first chanted the name Narayan, at that time, all his sins were immediately burned. So when we understand that the roots were burned, then the the vasana, the desire to commit sins, was also eradicated at that time. Now, after that, he would often address his son Narayan. That come over here, what are you doing? Have you eaten your food, Narayan? Come and sit with me, Narayan. So, by this chanting of the name Narayan, Bhakti grew in him. And it is because of this bhakti that Ajamel was able to call Narayan at the time of death. Right? So many important points made over here. One is contrary to the general assumption that Ajmel's chanting at the time of death was the cause of his eventual liberation. Chakravarti Pad says that that is not true because it would take away the potency of chanting the name at other points of time. So he says that only regardless of whether the person is living or at the point of death, the chanting of the name acts. And in Ajmal's case, it began to act the very first time he called out to his son. The subsequent calling of the name Narayan was the cause of bhakti. And this bhakti was actually the cause of him able to call out Narayan at the time of death. Now, one might say that, but Ajmal was calling his son, right? So who happened to be named Narayan. So Sukadev Goswami, he mentions in this verse 14 that if one chants the name, so he gives 4 conditions over here. Sanketayam, Parihasyam, Stobyam, Helenam. And so a Sanket is that one is calling indirectly, which is the case of Ajmal, that he was calling Narayan, but he was indicating somebody else. Parihasyam is joking. Stobium is for musical entertainment. Sometimes people, they either put in the name of the Lord, the names of the Lord for rhythm, just to maintain some rhythm. Sometimes they'll put it as fillers. We see sometimes in songs for movies, there'll be some song going and suddenly in the middle they will say, let's say, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, right? Just, just for that shock factor. And the fourth is neglectfully. Right? So these 4 conditions will have the effect which is given here, that the person is immediately freed from the reactions of unlimited sins. So this is why when Ajmal first called the name of Narayan, even though it was Sanketyam, but he was immediately freed from all the reactions of his past sins, not only those that he had committed in this life, but in all his past lives. Now, in this 4th situation, the important consideration is that the name is called without criticism or malice. So there was no offense to the name. And this is applicable to all the 4 situations. It is definitely applicable to Ajmal because he was calling out to his son for whom he had a lot of affection. So there was no question of any criticism or malice. So he was able to avail of this potency of the holy name. So philosophically, we know that the effects of the erasure of the root of sins is that a person do not commit any more sins. Because as you remember in the Nectar of Devotion, that the cycle of sins is self-perpetuating. That when somebody is committing sins, then it goes through the stage of Kuta, Bij, Aprarad, Prarabdha. So it goes through that stages where it first becomes a latent desire, then it becomes a strong desire, then it becomes a manifest desire. So that is one of the outcomes of sins is suffering. The other is that it also sows the seed of future suffering. So when the sins are uprooted, then because that seed is no longer there, the person is not inclined to commit any more sins. And the second is that the person is liberated. Because sins is what is holding us to this material world. So if there is no more reactions, then there is no more binding. But both did not happen in the case of Ajmail. So we see that he continued to sin and he was very much on the material platform. He was definitely not liberated. So there is no indication that after his son Narayan was born, he suddenly gave up his sinful activities and became a liberated person. So he continued to live his life of stealing and drinking wine and having illicit relation, very much on a material platform. So Ajmail, why did not Ajmail get liberated immediately? Right? So the first understanding for that is that this was ordained by the Lord. So even though Ajmail was qualified to become liberated, by the desire of the Lord, he did not achieve liberation. Why? Because when other people would see Ajmail and say that Ajmail got liberated the first time he chanted, let us also chant and become liberated. But they would be chanting offensively with material desires. So the reason that Ajmail became qualified to get liberated was because he was chanting without offense. But externally, people would not be able to discern that. All that they would say was that Ajmail chanted Narayan once, so he got liberated. So they would give up the practice of Karma Yoga, Gyan, and Astang Yoga. They would lead a whimsical life and then simply say that we will chant the name and get liberated. But they would not get liberated because, unlike Ajmail, their chanting would be contaminated with the offense of having material desires. So it would not be Namabhas but Namaprat. Now they would obviously make spiritual advancement, but because of this, they would whimsically give up the gradual paths for spiritual development that is offered in the Vedas. Now, another reason is that the effect of the holy name is also delayed because of offenses against the holy name or because of the devotee acting impiously. Now, in case of Ajmail, there were no offenses against the holy name, but he was acting impiously. So, by the desire of the Lord, the effects of the holy name are delayed. Now, in some rare cases, the effect is delayed for the devotee to further perfect one's bhakti. So even though the person is chanting perfectly, but because the devotee has a particular mood or Krishna has a particular desire, then the effect of the holy name is delayed. Example of that is Maharaj Bharat. So Parikshit Maharaj had earlier condemned material atonement as elephant bathing. He says that the result of atonement is not significant because after performing atonement, the person continues to sin. Now, he's seeing that Ajmail is doing the same thing. That after chanting Narayan, not at the time of death, but earlier on when he named his son Narayan, after chanting Narayan, he continued to sin. So Parishad Maharaj could have condemned this, saying that this process is not bona fide because even after chanting Narayan, Ajmail continued to sin. But being a pure devotee of the Lord, Parishad Maharaj refrained from doing so because he understood these underlying reasons that the Lord desired to delay the effect of liberation. And the impious activities can act as an anchor. So we do not see Parishad Maharaj criticizing the elephant bathing effect of the holy name. Now, so we said there were two effects of pure chanting, that liberation is achieved and the person stops performing sinful activities. So previously we saw the reason why Ajmal did not get immediate liberation. Why immediately after saying Narayan, Ajmal did not get liberated. Now let's see what could be the reason for Ajmal continuing to sin after chanting the holy name. So the first reason, the example is given of potter's wheel. That a potter, he will use a stick to rapidly rotate the wheel, and then he will remove the stick and use both his hands to shape the vessel because the wheel is moving because of the prior momentum. So similarly, Ajmail was sinning because of past impressions or out of habit or out of addiction. But he was not driven to sin because of sinful propensity. So in the past, he was sinning because he was inclined to sinful activities. Now he was sinning because he was addicted to sinful activities. So devotees also can sometimes can relate to that when when one takes to Krishna consciousness, then there are certain things that a person is habituated to. And by taking bhakti, they understand they should not do it. Sometimes it's drinking tea, sometimes it's maybe eating onion garlic. So they understand and they actually even lose the desire to do so. But because there is such a strong conditioning that they, at least for some time, they're driven to do so. So because of these past impressions, Ajmail was sinning, not because there was sin in him. Now the second reason again is ordained by the Lord to protect the holy name. Because otherwise people would say that sinful Ajmail was liberated by chanting, we shall also do the same. Which means that people will simply perform excessively sinful activities following the path of or so-called path of Ajmail, saying that we will sin and we will come back and say Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. And then we will go and sin again and then we will say Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. But they would not get the effect that Ajmail had because they would be committing the seventh offense against the holy name, which is performing sinful activities on the strength of the holy name. So they would be cheated themselves. They would be misled. So Krishna wanted to protect such malicious thinking. Right? For great extent, Krishna is protecting us against ourselves. And so that is why By his desire, Ajamel continued to sin. But these sins are, Chakravarti Pad says, they are like a bite of a toothless serpent, which means that generally speaking, sins result in suffering. That's why the Yamadutas rush to claim Ajamel. But devotees are accountable only to Krishna. So Krishna may simply nullify all the sins, like we see Mahaprabhu doing for Jagai Madai, or he may magnify them also, like we see Krishna doing for Jai Vijay. But in all cases, the devotees never fall to hell. So whether the sins are nullified or magnified or preserved, they devotees never fall to hell. They never meet the Yamadutas for either their sins or their aparadhs. So there's two distinction that is made. Aparadhs is offenses in the path of bhakti, and sins are activities that are not prescribed in the Vedas. So devotees committing either of these two, sins or aparadhs, which means that even devotees are committing the seventh offense, which is they're committing sinful activities on the strength of the holy name, they do not meet the Yamadutas. But they do meet Krishna. They do meet Krishna in the form of chastisement. So Krishna does not always deal with his devotees with a gentle hand. Sometimes the punishment of Krishna may be much more than what Yamraj can give out. That example that is given is Jai Vijay, that um, they uh, they forbade the four Kumaras. The four Kumaras were momentarily angry and then they were apologetic. But Lord Vishnu came and said, for 3 births you will be born as demons to be killed by me. And so their offense was greatly magnified by the desire of Krishna. Now, Jai Vijay could have opened up the Vedas and said that, okay, Brahman Aparadh is this, we can perform atonement, or this is excessive. But the fact is that devotees are always under the control of Krishna, either for reward or for punishment. So the sins that Ajmal was performing, whether under his past impressions or by the desire of Krishna, did not accrue like karmic sins, which is why the Yamadutas had no right over Ajmal. Okay. Now, one might say that there are other endeavors in which the name of the Lord is chanted, and specifically in what is known as Bahirmukhi Vedas, which is in Karma Yoga, in Gyan, in Astang, there is always mantras that is mentioning the name of the Lord. Like Narayan, 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 they will say, or there are purificatory mantras. Even in the most Karmkand portion of the Vedas, you will see Vishnu, 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 Swastir Vishnu. So they have all these mantras that also include the chanting of the holy name. So the question is, why don't they get the same benefit that Ajamel had? That they should also be protected from. So all the protection that Ajamel got, that his sins were no longer considered as sins, liberation, all this protection should be extended to all the performers of Karma Gyan and Astang. But this does not happen because of offense to the holy name. So in all other paths, bhakti is a supporting anga. And the followers of this path are Namapradi, since they lack faith in the holy name, or they give material interpretation to them. Now, previously we said that when devotees commit aparadha, they do not go to hell. Now, here, this aparadha is not committed by devotees. So, these are called Guni Bhaktas. Guni Bhaktas mean that Bhakti is not the predominant anga. It is, Guni means supporting, minor. There is a sliver of Bhakti. So, Bhakti is incidental. So, they do not come in the category of devotees, which is why the protection that Krishna extends to his devotees, whether they are sinful or aparadhis, is not available to them. So if such people sin, then they will go to hell. They will see the Yamadutas, even though they may be chanting the holy name, because their conception is not of devotion. So Vishnu Chakravarti gives the example that a great person protects to the extent that one surrenders. So similarly, the holy name acts. Right. So the holy name of Bhakti Devi is not completely without mercy for these followers of Karma, Gyan and Astana. It does show them some mercy by giving them the material results of their material endeavors. So whether they are atoning materially or whether they are performing yagyas to get material opulences or siddhis, all these are actually coming from Bhakti Devi. But she does not give anything more than that. So she gives something out of mercy, but she does not bestow bhakti on them. And the example that is given is that in Karmkand, there is Vaidapashu Himsa, which means sacrifice of animals. And one who performs this according to the Vedas goes to the heavenly planets. But even though he may ascend to the heavenly planets, he will carry with him this propensity of killing animals. So he will never be free of the fault of killing. Even though he's following the scriptures, but because he's following that particular anga of the scriptures, that tendency to kill will remain in him. So similarly, when one does bhakti as a supporting limb of karma or jnana, that fault of considering bhakti of minimizing bhakti stays with the person. So they do not get the benefit of what devotees get, which is that their bhakti is preserved and it grows. For them, what happens is that their offenses to the bhakti is preserved and it grows because of the lack of mercy of Bhakti Devi. Now, one might say that you are criticizing the karmis, but Ajamel was also a karmi. So it is mentioned that he was pious, Brahmanical, followed the rules and regulations, gentle, versed in the scriptures, right? So the understanding is that his Brahmanism was destroyed by drinking wine and other sins. So how can his karmitva stay? So karmitva is the propensity to enjoy materially, like the propensity to kill animals, right? So that is karmitva. So with his so when his attraction to the benefits of karma were gone, then his minimizing of bhakti also went away. So as a karmi, he was doing these two things. That he had this propensity to minimize bhakti and the latent desires that come with those who perform material activities. But then Ajmal became impious. So when he became impious, he completely rejected the Vedas. So when he rejected the Vedas, he stopped performing any pious activities. So he never did any yagyas chanting Vishnu, Vishnu, Vishnu. He never had any desires to enjoy piously. So when that went away, the mood of minimizing bhakti also went away. So this is why his chanting of Narayan led him to Ananya Bhakti, because he was free of offenses to bhakti. So the same thing is true for anybody, that if the karmis they desist from nam aparadh and they counter previous offenses by nam kirtan, they will make advancement. And these are the two things that Ajmal did. That he desisted from nam aparadh by giving up all pious activities. And he countered previous offenses by calling out Narayan frequently. So just like he made offenses, or just like he made advancements, so would the others make advancement. And then it's further mentioned that when the Nam Apradhis take Vaishnav Diksha and Vaishnav Guru, and they take shelter of pure devotional service, then as their bhakti progresses, to that extent their offenses are destroyed and bhakti's mukhya phal, which is Krishna prema, shall arise. In case of Ajmal, it was sharp. At one point, he suddenly gave up all this. But for those who are karmis, nama pradis, whether karma, gyan, or asthang, it's kind of common term is used commonly. That if they follow the rules and regulations of bhakti, like taking diksha and philosophically taking shelter of keval bhakti, pure devotional service, then to the extent that they take shelter, Bhakti Devi will respond and Krishna Prema will arise. And further on, by serving the devotees in their association, then the complete namafal of the results of chanting will be bestowed on them and they will advance to the 14 stages of bhakti. So this is the gradual process that the offenders have the opportunity to make by taking initiation, by developing a desire to serve the Lord, by serving the devotees. They will then gradually progress through the 14 stages of bhakti. But here again, one can say that Ajmal did not take shelter of Guru. And he also did not go through the 14 stages of bhakti. So the point that is made is that bhakti is independent. Now, this point later on is to some extent it is modified by Chakravarti Pad, but at this point he says that bhakti is not dependent on diksha or a guru. That bhakti is completely independent. If Krishna so desires, he can bestow it on anybody at any time in any situation. Bhakti is never constrained by any other situation. So, yes, Ajamel did not take shelter of the Guru, but Bhakti is not dependent on it. So, Chakravarti's path says that Ajamel did not accept a Guru and yet he easily attained the Lord. The reason, those who are like asses, who are always in sense gratification, who do not know who is Bhagwan, who is Bhakti, and who is Guru, even in their dreams, if they become nirapradhis like Ajmal, they can also be delivered by Namabhas chanting, even without a Guru. So the point he is making is that what this pastime is showing is the strength of the holy name. That at one end you have people who are at the bottommost rung of the ladder. They're Vikarmis, out and out Vikarmis. Ajmal is in that category. And at the other end, you have those who are liberated. And that whole spectrum is quickly covered by chanting the name without offenses. No other condition is needed. That is the potency of the holy name. Now, these other slides are not fully related to Ajmal's pastime, but Vishwanath Chakravarti speaks about it for philosophical completeness. So he talks about the rebirth of Vaishnavas. So he says there are two kinds of Vaishnavas. They are the Sapradis who turn away from Krishna, and they are the Nirapradis who are completely absorbed in Krishna. Now, for the Nirapradis, it is simple. There is no delay. When they start chanting the holy name, they go to Vaikuntha. That was the case of Ajmer. Because he was a Nirapradi, he was chanting without offense, he went straight to Ajmer. And then the same is mentioned. The example of Maharaj Bharat is said that even Nirapradi Vaishnavas may take birth to attain a special type of prema. And the Lord may delay in attainment to award that special kind of prema, just like Maharaj Bharat took 3 births. Now, we also know there were some offense committed by Maharaj Bharat, but there's also the understanding that he was already a Mahabhagavat. He was at the stage of Bhava. So one of the understanding of his pastime is that in order to increase his attraction to the Lord by his own desire or by the desire of the Lord, he went through this 3 births. Now the Sapradis are of 2 kinds. Those who perform offenses against devotees or Krishna, and those who commit sins like meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, but they're devotees. So for the bhakti aparadhas, as long as these offenses are not destroyed, the sins stay unfructified. So what does unfructified mean? That the effects of the sins are not manifested. They are preserved. And as the devotees make progress, by the growth of bhakti, these offenses that they are committing are destroyed. And when these offenses are destroyed, the sins are also destroyed. And as they take birth again and again, their bhakti continues to grow. So when it is mentioned that the sins stay unfructified, the focus is on the results of the sin offered by Yamraj. So because the devotees are outside the purview of Yamraj, the sins, they never fructify. But the Lord may look at the sins and act as per his desire. He may he may choose to burn them away, or he may choose to magnify their punishment. But whatever the Lord does is to increase the devotion in the devotee. So if the devotee takes births again and again, it is by the desire of the Lord to increase the bhakti in the devotee. But Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur optimistically always says one or two, maybe three births. Right? Does not say. And I don't know if there's a tattva in there, but he generally just says one, two, or three births. Now, what about devotees who are committing sins? So here it is mentioned that if a sprout of devotion arises, that cannot be destroyed. It cannot be overcome by sins for it to grow and bear fruits and flowers. The Vaishnavas, they will take birth again not due to pap or punya, but because of their Lord's desire for them to attain future mercy. So whether the devotee is committing devotional offenses or whether he is committing sins, in either cases, they do not come under the purview of Yamraj. In both cases, Krishna will decide what is the best thing to do. So if the devotee is committing sins, then the rebirth of the devotee is not because of the reaction of the sins, but because of the desire of the Lord to perfect the devotion. If the devotee is committing aparadhs, then again the rebirth is not because of the reactions to the aparadhs. It is once again for them to perfect their bhakti. Right? So the takeaway is that whereas those who are without offenses, they do not take birth again, unless there is a special case, but generally they will not take birth again. And those who have offenses, whether they are sins or aparadhs, they do not come under the purview of Lord Yamraj, but they may continue to take birth over and over again until the Lord is satisfied that they are purified of their sins and they are purified of their aparadhs. So the second philosophical point is happiness and distress in Vaishnavas. So whether a Vaishnav is happy or in distress, the understanding is that it is always coming from bhakti. It is always caused by Krishna. So this goes back to the point that was made in the case of Ajamil. That Ajamil continued to sin after chanting because it was the desire of Krishna. So similarly, Krishna may bestow happiness and distress. Specifically, distress is compared here by, like a doctor sometimes give prescriptions like fasting and bitter medicine to increase the patient's appetite. So even when Ajmail had chanted and was freed of all sins, he continued to live and live a sinful life. And it said that those who live sinful life also suffer. Their enjoyment may be there, but that's the mode of ignorance. That it begins with suffering and it ends with suffering. So we see that Ajmail continued to suffer even after he had chanted the holy name, so that the Lord could increase his desire when the appropriate time came. And the point also is made that strong offenses against the holy name can also result in distress. So if somebody is repeatedly offending Vaishnavas or or performing any other kind of offenses, then Krishna may bestow material distress on the person as a way to purify that person's sinful desires. So amongst the 10 Namaparats, Vishwanath Chakravarti says 3 are particularly strong. And these can be related back to our previous discussion or our discussion of the previous slide. So the 5th offense is to give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. The 6th is to consider the glories of the holy name to imagination. And 8 is to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as auspicious ritualistic activities. So the reason he said they're particularly strong is because these are the offenses that are committed by the people who consider bhakti as a minor anga. So they may recite Vishnu and they say Vishnu actually means something else. Or they may say that actually the potency of the holy name that is spoken in the scriptures is exaggeration for encouragement. When Krishna says that by chanting one name you burn away all sins, they say, well, it's Krishna wants you to encourage. It's not, should not take it literally. It is just exaggeration to encourage people. Or people might say, like they do Satyanarayan Katha, and they say that by the worship of Lord Satyanarayan, I should get material opulences. And so he said these are 3 of the strongest ones, which are directly detrimental to one's Vaishnavism. Then among the remaining 7, he gives out 2 also. One is Vaishnava Prat, no surprise there. And the 7th one is committing sinful activities. He said these are 2 extremely strong offenses. They can only be pacified by undergoing the proper distress caused by them and by continuous Nam Kirtan and not otherwise. The other 5 Namaprats are countered by continuous chanting alone. Now, he also wants to make sure that he does not, or Vishnu Chakravarti wants to make sure that one does not try to follow the path of Ajmail and say that taking shelter of a guru is not really needed. So he says that those Nam Aparadhis who are free from karma and gyan and who are engaged in Shravana Kirtanadi Bhakti, which means that they are properly situated, or at least in that context, they're properly situated Vaishnavas, but who have not taken shelter of a guru, shall attain the Lord in future births with difficulty by their bhajan and not otherwise. Meaning that without guru, one will not easily obtain the Lord. Now, he's not negating the point. He says one can attain the Lord without a guru, but with lots of difficulty. And he says future births, meaning that one will have to take birth many times. However, those that have discrimination that Hari is only worshipable, his attainment is by bhajan only, and Guru is the only guide for bhajan. And many devotees have attained Hari with guidance of Guru only. If they think, why should I accept a Guru quoting Nadiksham Nacha Satkriyam, or the case of Ajmer? So Nadiksham Nacha Satkriyam, this is to show that Bhakti is independent. Satkriyam is pious activities. Diksham is Guru. So sometimes they say na Diksham, na Satkriyam. The Bhakti does not depend on pious activities or Diksha. Or contextually, actually, this Diksha mostly meant to not spiritual Diksha, but different kind of Diksha. But even if one says like that, they give the example of Ajmer, then they are also guilty of Guru Avigya. So Guru Avigya is the third offense, to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. And once again, it says that only he will not attain Hari, but in that birth or in some other birth, when this aparadh destroys and he takes shelter of Guru, then only he shall attain Hari. So Chakravarti Pad again reinforces the fact that uh, very, very difficult to the point that it is impossible to attain perfection without taking shelter of a Guru. Then he talks about Namapradis, he talks about demigod worshippers. Right? He says they're actually worse because they actually consider the Devas to be like Krishna. So they're not even Guni Bhuta Bhaktas. Guni Bhuta Bhaktas are Karm Kanda who are considering bhakti to be a minor limba. They may perform it just because they want material opulence. But then there are some who might say that I worship Lord Shiva because he is the supreme personality of Godhead or whichever demigod, right? So he says that they are the worst. They don't even get what the Guni Bhuta Bhaktas get. Right? And those who are simply Namapradhis, who are just offending the holy name without any redeeming aspects, they are never delivered. And then he talks about special situations. He talks about people like Kamsa who attained liberation, or the soldiers in the battlefield, or Naraka or Banasur. And then he concludes saying that you should never consider the exception to be the rule. All these exceptions indicate that Krishna is independent in bestowing bhakti. That's all they indicate. It does not mean that one becomes an asura hoping to get liberation. Right? It does not mean that one performs excessively sinful activities like Jagai Medai, expecting Mahaprabhu to take them away. Right? That is misunderstanding the Leela. So I'll stop at this point, and then after this, I have a few set of slides that indicate that how was Ajmal chanting without offense. Right. So we'll go over the 10 offenses and see that how Ajmal was not committing any one of the 10 offenses. But just because this is a lot of material to digest, wanted to stop over here and see if there is any discussion on what we have spoken so far.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. There is a lot of hope in this pastime. Uh, Especially, I felt that when you are explaining the pastime of Niraparadis and Saparadis, uh, so there I could feel there is a lot of protection from Krishna directly is there for practicing devotees. Uh, but still, I am getting few questions that I wanted to refine my understanding on chanting the holy name. Three questions, precise, Prabhuji. First question is like from the Ajamil pastime. It appears like at least, although it is not true, chanting without offense Krishna's name is easy thing because most people will have their children name or some friend's name, some or other Lord's name we call without offense, because many times we hear even chanting once without offense will nullify all the sinful reaction of millions of years. So but that doesn't seem like the case. So I wanted to understand uh, uh, that aspect of it.
So, based on what you're saying, that does not seem like the case.
uh, like Based on what meaning, like we are chanting so many years holy name with conscious effort, and also we also have friends family who are having Lord's names. We
Yeah, I
are
mean,
calling them
I
without
understand
offense.
that.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but But you're
Uh,
saying that that does not seem like the case.
uh,
So are you following the path of those people after their death? Are you keeping track of what happens to them at the time of the death? Where do they go?
no, no, we we can't. So maybe I would say uh, people in general call other people without offense. So will they be benefited to the extent like Ajamil?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely. So Vishwanath Chakravarti clearly says uh, that for those people who make statements like these are considered to be namapradhis because they are doubting the potency of the holy name. Right. So Ajamel pastime clearly indicates that Sanketam indirectly,
uh,
simply once calling the holy name without offenses was sufficient to destroy all the sins and liberate Ajamel. And
good.
then he says people will listen to this pastime and say that that did not really happen. And he says those are the people who will not get the mercy of the holy name.
Oh,
So he puts them at a lower level as compared to Ajamel.
hmm. That's Prabhuji. It is even actually giving lot of hope. Uh, Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Uh, and Another question, Prabhuji, is also maybe like those Vikarmis, like who are completely ignorant, they get benefit, like by this. So, and then we are acquiring, knowledge through proper parampara, and we are having guru shelter. So, are we making more offenses by having the knowledge at times, those people who unconsciously benefit? Uh, because sometimes even we do when we chant, we somehow wanted to commit 16, complete 16. We will feel that 16 complete ho gaya. Uh, so that itself is seems like uh, an offense. So yeah.
So one thing that is mentioned here that a practicing devotee, if he is completely infested with namaprad and with sinful activities, both, he is at least at the stage of Ajamel,
Okay.
right? Because what was the situation of Ajamel that he was not taken to by the Yamdutas to a hellish situation,
Yes.
right? And that is explicitly said that even if a devotee
Sure.
is fully infested with the offenses to the holy name and is performing all kinds of sinful activities, he will not go to hell. He will never see the Yamdutas,
Hare Krishna.
right? Now, he may suffer
Yes.
because when it's said that he is not infested with sins, then the understanding is, and this is sins as understood by the cycle of karma, right? So he is not going to suffer the results of those kinds of sins. But Krishna might give him even more suffering, right? He makes that point that,
Yes.
for his minor offense, Mahaprabhu, he banned Chota Haridas. And Jagai Madai, they had so much sins in them, and he gave them liberation
Yes.
because he is the fully independent Lord. It's Parat. He can do whatever
Correct.
he wants. So
Yes.
one should not take shelter of this and say that because I'm a devotee, I can perform sins, because they may actually suffer more,
Right.
right? But this is more of a technical point of view that they will not suffer the reaction of the sins because Yamraj is the person who gives the reactions of the sins,
Sure.
right? And later on, Yamraj will say that I have nothing to do with devotees. right? He says to the Yamadutas in the next chapter, he'll say that don't ever go near devotees.
Yes.
Does not mean that all devotees are sinless,
Right.
but the point is that their sins are not under
His purview.
his purview.
Wonderful, Prabhuji. Actually, it is extremely hopeful. It gains a lot of confidence. One last question, Prabhuji. Uh, like you explained that, Ajamil's case also, like his sins are burnt like a dry grass, uh, but still his past impressions still remain in him. So, uh, at what stage of bhakti, maybe to be put precise, these impressions also will go away?
So it's not mentioned here, but it's mentioned by Vishwanath Chakravarti Par in Madhuri Kadamani. He said that impressions stay all the way till Prema Bhakti.
Oh, Krishna.
Right. And he says they go, but obviously they become increasingly weak as one advances. The significant stage, of course, is Anartha Nivritti,
Yeah.
where the predominant impact is gone, but whatever remains, they slowly they go away. Again, the example of Maharaj Bharat is given that he was at a Bhava stage, but he still had some anarthas in him.
Yes. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I think that devotees are, especially as a Gaudiya Sampradaya, they are very lucky in a way, because Ajamil was chanting the name of Narayan, which is Vishnu, and we know that free name of Ram, no, 1,000 name of Vishnu is equal to one name of Ram, and free name of Ram equal to one name of Krishna. That means when a devotee chanting, okay, I won't say sincerely because pure devotees chant sincerely. I mean, when he chanting Hare Krishna is even Radha there, then we have Krishna, which is equal to 3,000 name of Vishnu in one chanting. I mean, we are very lucky in a way, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given to us.
Yes, Prabhu, you're right.
Okay.
Prabhuji, one more question can I ask, Prabhuji? When we chant the holy name, there are few times we get, very good, like, uh, experience is not the right word, but, you get the taste of it, this thing, and that motivates further chanting. So when we get little taste, does that indicate we are doing there without aparad, or uh,
So the progression of chanting from Namaprad to Namabhas is when the offenses are destroyed. Right. The understanding is that this taste that we get is not because the offenses are gone, but because Krishna is giving us a sneak preview into what lies in store for us. Right. So Krishna is encouraging us because he understands it's an uphill battle for us, and there are so many things we're struggling with him. So he gives us a taste to keep us to keep us motivated and encouraged.
yes, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay. So let me go through the remaining slides rather quickly. I think uh, it's more straightforward. Okay, so let's consider the 10 offenses and Ajmal's interaction with them. So the first offense is to blaspheme the devotees. Ajmal did not associate with devotees, so never blasphemed them. And we'll see a lot of parallels with Jagai Madai also, right? But let's focus on Ajmal. I think in your mind you can draw the parallels. That he obviously led a life that was completely different from those of the devotees. then consider the names of Shiva or Brahma to be equal to Lord Vishnu. So, because Ajamel was impious, he had no regard for devas, he did not consider them one way or the other. Right? So, it was an area that he did not endeavor to give any thoughts. Disobey the order of the spiritual master. He did not take shelter of a guru, so I never had the opportunity to offend a guru. Blaspheme the Vedic scriptures. So while Ajmal did not follow the Vedic injunctions, he did not blaspheme them. Like blasphemy is taking parts of the Vedic injunctions and saying that misinterpreting them or condemning them. He simply ignored them. Right? So he was not contaminated by that offense. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. So this is to define the holy name of the Lord in terms of one's mundane calculation. Right? And he had no time. Ajmal had no time. He was committing all the sins. He had no time or interest to speculate one way or the other on the holy name. Right? So he never sat down with another person and said that maybe this name actually means this. And sometimes people say that, a chanting of Om actually aligns the airs in your body and so many interpretations are there. Ajmal had no interest in them. Consider the glories of the holy name as imagination. Right? So sometimes devotees commit this offense that they will hear Ajmal's pastimes or they will see so many glorifications of the holy name and they will say that it's actually just exaggeration. Right? Again, Ajmal was not guilty of it because he had no interest in it. To commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name. So while Ajmal performed countless sinful activities, he was not taking shelter of the holy name for protection. Right? So he was not thinking that I will chant so I will be protected from the sins that I am doing or I will do. Eighth is to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities. Karam So Ajmal was not doing Karam Kand. He used to do it, and that time he was an offender. But then he gave up doing Karam Kand, and at that time his offenses also went away by his chanting. To instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy name, obviously not something that Ajmal is going to do. And to not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy name, again, because he didn't have any relationship with the holy name, one way or the other. And finally, apipramada, offense to be inattentive while chanting, which Ajmal was not. So whenever he called out to Narayan, he was calling out to his son, but he did so attentively. So this was especially at the time of his impending death. So it's said there are three stages of chanting: Namaprad, offensive, Namapas, clearing, and Shuddhanam, which is offenseless. So somebody like Ajmal can only reach the stage of Namapas. So one might ask that isn't it better to be a non-devotee and hope to reach the stage of Namabhas? So firstly, that premise itself is difficult. It's kind of like asking a person that this I'm giving you this mantra, it's very potent, but this was this sadhu in Bombay actually, who supposedly had this ability to bless childless couples with children. So when the couples would come, then he would give them a fruit, and then he would say that you both sit together. He would give them some mantras to chant, then eat the fruit, and then you will have a child. After that, the only condition is that while you're eating the fruit, you should not think of Lord Hanuman, because Lord Hanuman is brahmachari and it's not conducive to having children. So for somebody to think of not thinking is not going to happen. If they say that, okay, let me not think of Hanuman, then they're actually thinking Hanuman. In his case, it worked to his advantage because a lot of the people who came to him had children anyway. And for those who did not have children, he would say that you definitely thought of Hanuman. They said, yes, that is true. So for somebody to say that I will be at the stage of Namabhas is impossible. Now, Ajamil, he accidentally came to the stage of Namabhas. Prabhupada gives the example of somebody becoming rich by winning a lottery. And so, yes, there are some people who become rich by winning a lottery, but others people cannot wait and say that when I win a lottery, I'll become rich. Not going to happen. Right? The main lesson in Ajmail's pastime is what is revealed by the acharyas. Also, Navabhas will so by unless one chants with proper conception, then Shuddhanam will not appear. So, in case of Ajamil, after he reached the stage of Namabhas, he lived for another 6 months and he chanted with proper conception. And that's why he went back to Godhead. Right? So that is what the devotees are aspiring for. The devotees are not aspiring for Namabhas as the final stage. Yes, they are aspiring it for Namabhas as a stage to Shuddhana. But if a devotee is consciously aspiring for Namabhas, then essentially the person is committing offenses against the holy name, looking upon it as a way to become free of sinful reactions and getting liberation. Right? So when devotees engage in devotion, they are looking to go back to Godhead, which is only available through Shuddhana. Now, technically, the Namabhas, it corresponds to the stage beyond Anartha Nivritti, typically Nishtha, say Nishtha Ruchi, typically Nishtha, and it delivers Kleshangni and Subhada. So Kleshangni means the absence of any miseries, and Shubhada means the presence of all piety. And the Namabha stage also delivers Mukti or liberation. So one might say that this seems to penalize devotees because Ajmail's situation would include almost all those who have had no exposure to the holy name. Like there are so many people like Ajmail. If you look at the 10 offenses, there are so many people who are not committing those 10 offenses because they've never heard of the holy name. So they never perform sins on the strength of the holy name. They never consider the holy name to be material. But the important thing is that the key to success for Ajmail is that he did chant the holy name without offense. So the vast majority of people who are not exposed to the holy name will also not chant the holy name. And then there are some people who are exposed to the holy name incidentally. Whether a devotee comes to them and says, my name is Krishna Das, and they say, okay, Krishna Das, nice to meet you. So by that Agyat Sukriti, they come to the stage of Namabhas. But Ajmail capitalized on his Agyat Sukriti to later perfect his life. So one should not think that interacting with the holy name is penalizing the devotees. It's kind of just like saying that interacting with devotees, because if you interact with Vaishnavas, there is an opportunity for Vaishnava Prad. So one might say, why am I penalized for this? Let me give up my interaction to devotees. But then all the benefits of Vaishnava Sangha are also withdrawn. So similarly, when one interacts with the holy name, then there is a danger of Namaprad, but then there is also the potential of the benefits of Shuddhana. And because the devotees are always optimistic, they are aspiring to reach the stage of pure devotional service. And then the other point is that regardless of the offenses, so some devotees might say, why are we being penalized for being a devotee? But there is really no penalty, because even if they are chanting the holy name with offenses, even if they are performing sinful activities, they have the same protection that Ajmail had. They are still going to be protected from the Yamdutas. They're still going to be protected from falling to hell. They're still going to receive the mercy of Krishna in terms of repeated births. So where is the penalizing for the devotees? So this I won't read it. I'll send this deck to Prem Kishore Prabhu and he will share it with you. I think with the deck I will also add some slides that give the original purport of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which is a little bit difficult to understand, which is still condensed, because when he gives his purport, he puts in everything he says, he supports it with many Vedic references. He gives quotes, and that's why it becomes a little cumbersome and difficult to understand. But and this has not been done by me. This is done by some other devotee. He took the purport of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He removed a lot of the references or condensed them so that they become a little bit more readable. So I'll also add those slides when I send it to Prem Kishore Prabhu, and he can share it with all of you. This is Srila Prabhupada about the glories of Ramabhas. So conclusion, since Ajamil was chanting without offense, it is considered to be at the stage of Namabhas. This is sufficient to bestow liberation. However, the absence of offenses cannot take one to Krishna. For that, one must chant with proper conception. This is what Ajmal did when he got a second chance. Right? Then he went from Namabhas to Shuddhnam. Then he not only chanted without offense, but also with proper conception. Thus, he was able to go back to Godhead. So this is the end of the slide. And I think time-wise, we have 10 minutes. I was thinking of doing some of the verses, but I think I'll just stop here and see if there's any further discussion. If not, we can end a little early.
Sure.
Yeah, Prabhu, one comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sometime like when the child do something, the mother can slap the child to correct the child. It does not mean that it's punishing the child, but it's for his own benefits. The same thing, no? When let's say a devotee commits some offense or something like that, Krishna can put us in a certain situation so that we learn from that and we don't repeat it again. Some of the offenses I think can be corrected like this because Krishna created a situation for us to learn from our offenses, correct?
Yes, Prabhu. Or like the other example that is given, that if a person is diseased, the doctor may give some bitter medicine. And the patient might complain that this is really bitter, but doctor says, no, you have to take it. And ultimately it cures the disease. Right? So Krishna may send some misery, and the devotee might complain that I'm a devotee of Krishna, why am I getting this misery? But then it is rectifying some other faults that he has, which is an impediment in his bhakti.
Yeah. Thank you, bro.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Uh, uh, like, just correct me if my understanding is wrong, Prabhuji. Like you mentioned, all the practicing devotees, they are already on the stage of Ajamil. So, meaning they will be eligible for liberation. But if at all, if some devotee is taking birth, it is only to perfect his life for pure devotion of going back to Godhead, but not because of karmic cycle. Is that understanding right, Prabhuji?
Because they're eligible for, what did you say? We are
They
eligible
are
for?
eligible for liberation, all the practicing devotees, because they are on the stage of Ajamil.
Not really. So when I said they're on the stage of Ajamel, this is from the perspective that Ajamel was protected from Yamraj,
Hmm.
right? But Ajamel was at the stage of Namabhas,
Correct.
Right. So unless the practicing devotees are also at the stage of namabhas, they are not, because namabhas is the one that qualifies one to take liberation if they so desire. Right. So Ajamel was at that stage, but not all practicing devotees may be at the stage of namabhas.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Right.
Yeah. But they are under Krishna's jurisdiction, not under Yamaraja's jurisdiction. Even next births, all those things.
So that way they are like Ajamel. So like all the sins that Ajamel were committing were under the under the under Krishna's jurisdiction. So after he first chanted Narayan,
Yeah.
all the sins that he committed and all the suffering that he had, they were all bestowed by Krishna. So that way the devotees are like Ajamel.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for clarifying.
One more comment to his question. It said there also those that take shelter of a guru. Very important. Correct, Prabhu?
That they have
No, those that take shelter of a bona fide guru is even luckier to attain that state of namabhas quicker.
So he strongly, so what Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, because the case of Ajamel is that he reached Namabhas without taking shelter of a guru. But Chakravarti Pad wants to make sure that we do not follow that path or the readers do not follow the path. So that's why he later on says that for one to make progress without taking the shelter of the guru is very, very difficult. He does not say it is impossible. He says it is very, very difficult. It's like somebody, you pick any skill, like you want to learn how to play violin, then you go to a teacher. Now, somebody might be exceptionally talented or whatever it is, they might learn it on their own, but very, very rare cases. But one should not take the exceptions as the rule. The rule is you have to take shelter of a guru. That's the rule.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so there are no more comments. We'll end over here. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कुरि वैष्णववृंद की जय। शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। जय गौर प्रेमानंद। हरि हरि हरे कृष्ण। Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.